Early humans began to leave Africa for the first time approximately 2 million years ago and migrate to other continents. These primitive peoples charted their own course as they departed Africa. Researchers had long assumed that Homo erectus migrated out of their native continent in pursuit of African mammals to hunt and scavenge. Nevertheless, all of the animal bones analyzed so far at Dmanisi are from Eurasian species, rather than African ones. The hominins are the only mammals not of Eurasian origin, and there is striking evidence that they behave differently than other animals. Perhaps expanding into new territory allowed hominins to hunt prey that did not know to fear and flee humans. These people had almost modern body proportions and were extremely efficient walkers and runners, but their arms moved differently, and their brains were much smaller than ours. They were sophisticated toolmakers with strong social and cognitive abilities. Simple stone flakes allowed these hominins to butcher meat, but even with their small stone flakes, these guys were badasses. Evidence shows that humans and carnivores were eating one another and competing for meat with larger carnivores. Piles of cobblestones near the entrance of an ancient gully imply that these hominins attempted to fend off or hunt predators by stoning them. Perhaps some of the primitive Homo erectus that gave rise to the Dmanisi people pushed further east, where their offspring evolved into later, larger-brained Homo erectus. Nonetheless, anthropologists currently speculate that the direct ancestors of modern humans were African populations of Homo erectus, rather than Asian populations of the same species, as exemplified by Java man and Peking man. Dates for Homo erectus's arrival in Asia are hotly debated. While erectus was clearly established in the region by 1.8 million years ago, some sites suggest that he arrived even earlier. This newfound wanderlust may have been influenced by an increased reliance on meat for sustenance. Carnivores typically require much larger home ranges than similar-sized herbivores, because they have fewer total calories available per unit area of territory. The early humans quickly spread east, reaching the Indonesian island of Java and East Asia. Homo erectus is the species of hominids that lived in Asia during this time period. This early human learned how to survive in Asia's bamboo forests. The scarcity of stone tools at Southeast Asian hominid sites suggests that erectus developed a technology based on bamboo, a strong and versatile material. Bamboo could have also been used to construct rafts, shelters, and household tools. They could have used bamboo to make spears for hunting and poles to knock animals down from tall trees. Homo erectus lived in these bamboo forests alongside giant pigs, a type of elephant known as stegodon, and the world's largest primate, Gigantopithecus, a vegetarian ape. Gigantopithecus may have been hunted by the early humans in Asia. They probably wouldn't have gone after the big adults, but they might have targeted juveniles. Indeed, people who live in forests today still eat apes. According to new evidence, Homo erectus may have exterminated a race of monster apes who would have towered over their predatory human counterparts. The evidence is a remarkable assemblage of fossils discovered by Vietnamese scientists, which includes the bones of Homo erectus and his stone weapons, as well as the remains of the ape Gigantopithecus, the largest primate known to have lived. Some paleontologists believed that Gigantopithecus had died out long before the emergence of modern man, so proof that the massive ape was actually a contemporary of Homo erectus would necessitate a rethinking of primate evolution timelines. Gigantopithecus has remained a mystery since its fossil remains were accidentally discovered in a Hong Kong pharmacy 100 years ago. Since 1935, scientists have discovered hundreds of Gigantopithecus teeth and jaw bones of similar size. Yet, aside from some barely identifiable chips, few other Gigantopithecus bones have ever been discovered, and attempts to reconstruct the animal have remained largely speculative. The ravages of ancient hyenas may explain the difficulty of discovering Gigantopithecus bones other than jaws and teeth. We know that hyenas lived alongside Gigantopithecus in mid-Pleistocene China, 700,000 to 300,000 years ago, and we know how modern hyenas in East Africa feed. When they consume the carcass of a large animal, they eat everything except the teeth and jaw bones, which are too difficult to chew. Gigantopithecus became extinct in the mid-Pleistocene, possibly surviving until around 300,000 years ago, or even later. Some believe that some form of Gigantopithecus has survived to this day as the abominable snowman, or yeti. Future investigation will reveal the predator-prey relationship that existed between Homo erectus and Gigantopithecus. But if reports from Vietnam are accurate, Gigantopithecus may have been no match for man, despite its massive size and presumed strength. Until now, there has been no direct evidence that Homo erectus lived alongside Gigantopithecus, let alone that man may have preyed on his massive relative. Erectus brains were smaller than those of Homo sapiens, which is a tactical disadvantage, but they most likely hunted with animalistic ferocity. According to evolutionary theory, the complexity of the human brain should increase over time, allowing for greater creativity and improved tools. However, Peking man is a Stone Age archaic human who left little evidence of evolution. According to a Chinese scientist, Chinese Homo erectus may not have been particularly intelligent, even compared to other species the Stone Age. Isolation may have reduced Chinese Homo erectus's adaptability. He had ape-like teeth and jaws, and he ate animals, nuts, seeds, and on occasion humans. Homo erectus, previously known as Pithecampus erectus, is one of the oldest known human species. Furthermore, the discovery demonstrated that Peking man walked fully upright like a human being, rather than stooping and shambling like an ape. According to a Chinese report, the Peking man remains show little evidence of advanced evolution. In fact, according to Professor Wei Qi, a researcher at the Chinese Academy of Sciences Institute of Vertebrate Paleontology and Paleoanthropology in Beijing, evidence suggests that Peking man was stupid. Dr. Wei believes that in their isolated environment, Chinese Homo erectus may have interbred over many generations. This increases the likelihood that offspring will be born with so-called deleterious traits, such as inherited conditions that impair quality of life and the ability to adapt and survive. He described how erectus worked a piece of stone by repeatedly striking it on one side, but rarely turning it. The scientist, who examined over 140 finds dating back roughly 700,000 years, said structural changes in Peking man skulls, discovered in different layers of sediment at different times, indicated an unusually slow evolution over 500,000 years. Yet, in his humble way, Chinese Homo erectus could make tools, such as stone knives and hatchets, for his chores. This cave in northern China contains the story of Peking man and his wife. She lived 500,000 years ago, and she was not beautiful by our standards. The reconstruction required giving her a much thicker neck than any modern woman has. Both the back of the skull and the powerful chinless jaw revealed muscle attachments that made such a neck unmistakable. Similarly, the cheeks had to be shaped to fit the muscle mass required to operate that heavy jaw. Eyebrow ridges were extremely prominent on the species, including their women. The most notable feature is the skull's low, flat arch. The arch of his skull top from front to back provides compelling evidence. It is the flattest and most gorilla-like of any known human skull, even flatter than one of the two skulls from Java, though the forehead is slightly higher. A sharp notch between the forehead and the thick ridge of the beetling brows is also gorilla-like. This feature is much more prominent in Homo erectus skulls. The position of the opening through which the spinal cord passes is an intermediate feature between apes and modern humans. In apes, this is located at the back of the skull and points outward. In modern humans, it is located well below the base of the skull and points upwards. This opening can be seen from the back of Peking man, just below the base of the skull. The brain inside that unusually shaped skull was quite small, but still within the human size range. Its average volume was 1,000 cubic centimeters, a little more than a quart. The largest Homo erectus skull ever collected has a capacity of 1,220 cubic centimeters. Modern man has an average of 1,350 cubic centimeters, but Neanderthal man's skull may have held even more, up to 1,425 cubic centimeters. Several of the 9 skulls collected thus far have been intact enough to allow casts to be made within their skull cases, allowing us to determine the size, shape, and total volume of the brain. It is a small and flat brain, with several structures that closely resemble those found in the brains of apes. Jaws and teeth, as well as skull and brain, provide evidence for Homo erectus' primitiveness. Apes have jaws with teeth arranged in a narrow horseshoe arch, and this ancient Chinese human has jaws that are less human and more ape-like. The canine teeth, while not as fang-like as those seen in gorillas, were noticeably larger and much longer-rooted than the corresponding teeth in our own jaw. What's more, there is evidence of rudimentary speech. The vertebral canal of erectus does not appear to have developed sufficiently to provide him with the breathing control required for complex speech. But he may have been the first hominid to use a proto-language based on evidence from the cervical vertebrae. Although there is no archaeological evidence, its well-developed brain and physical capabilities indicate that it may have used symbolic thought. A quantum leap in cognition and technology occurred approximately 900,000 years ago, and all of the characteristics that define modern humans were first developed by Homo erectus. Speaking of Homo erectus's culture, or civilization, may seem strange in light of what we know about his appearance and way of life. Nonetheless, he had a distinct culture level, albeit a primitive one. He knew how to make stone implements for cutting wood and foraging in the earth, as well as for hunting and fighting with his own species. Most importantly, he was already familiar with the use of fire, and anthropology considers this discovery to be the greatest single step forward in the history of humanity. So take him as you find him, beneath the thick neck, cannibalism and all. Despite his flaws, after all, he was still human. The fossil skeleton and other fossil evidence, such as stone tools, lead most scientists to conclude that, unlike their more primitive ancestors, erectus evolved into efficient hunters. Homo erectus, who was far removed from the mental level of the apes, knew how to make fire, which was the most significant discovery of the human race. Erectus travelled long distances on foot, working hard to find enough meat to feed his growing body and brain. He had full human stature as well. Estimates based on the length of the thigh bone indicate that their average height was approximately 5 feet 4 inches. Another thing these new leg bone discoveries suggest is confirmation of an existing theory based on the broken condition of all the skulls discovered so far. The leg bones were cracked open and blackened from exposure to fire. Indeed, erectus is also accused of having been a cannibal. Skull hunting and cannibalism, with their magical implications, date back over 1 million years. One of the earliest known cases of cannibalism among hominids occurred around 800,000 years ago. Some anthropologists believe some victims were eaten as part of a territorial defense strategy against neighbors. Both ritual cannibalism and head-hunting practices are rooted in magic and religion, and they are signs of man's spiritual awakening, though their exact meaning is unclear. Therefore, human skulls must have been left behind, either deliberately or unintentionally. Bones from their ancient feasts are buried in the debris that has accumulated inside their caves. After all, they had to eat something other than themselves and their neighbors.